media outreach and event planning for a local public relations company, and worked for 10 years as a journalist in the newsroom of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I'm really happy to have you with us today.
Great microphones. As Luann, or as Sharon said, I work for the St. Louis area Foodbank, and some people aren't familiar with the idea that a food bank is different than a food pantry. There are thousands of food pantries in our region, but really only 2 food banks. You can think of a food bank as a mothership. We bring in and distribute 25 million pounds of food to 500 partner agencies, which include food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, and senior feeding programs. The St. Louis area food bank has been around since 1975. We were originally founded because there was an epidemic of low birth weight babies. So we were started to provide food to young mothers. And over the years, we've evolved into providing food to people in 26 counties surrounding St. Louis City. So we serve 14 counties in Missouri and 12 counties in Illinois. So our coverage area is quite large. As Luann said, 1 in 4 children in that region, in the bi-state region, struggle with food insecurity. For adults, it's 1 in 8. So even if you're an adult, that number is pretty staggering. We serve, through our partner agencies, we serve about 57,000 people a week. So if you think of how many people that is, that's how many people we're providing food to every single week. Part of my job at the food bank is to go out to our partner agencies in rural areas, in the city, and to gather stories about the folks who are receiving food assistance. As Luann said, it's not who you would think. You know, there's sort of a misconception that people in line at the food pantry are homeless or never worked or on drugs. That's almost never the case. Of all of our clients, only 1% is homeless. And actually, 42% of our households have at least 1 working adult. So it's almost half. So what we're dealing with here is considered the working poor. These are folks who are working, who just can't quite make ends meet. They have enough money for either food or medicine, or food or heat. So sometimes they have to make a choice I'm not comfortable with. One of our agencies in St. Louis City is called the St. Louis Dream Center. I visited them last week to meet with a client, and I witnessed their backpack program. It's not technically a backpack program. Basically what they do, we provide them with food, and they put up a little table on a street corner in North City, and after school, children flock to them in droves to get a little sack of food, because that will be their only food until the next day at breakfast at school. And they do this 5 days a week, and they feed 800 kids that way. And these numbers are staggering. Until I worked for the food bank, I really had no concept of how many people are dealing with hunger in America. You see the commercials on TV about hunger in Africa, and it's a different type of hunger than that. What we suffer from here is food insecurity and malnutrition. A child may only eat a bag of chips, and that's it. And part of that is an education issue on healthy foods, what's healthy to eat, what's best to spend your money on. The St. Louis area food bank, just to explain a little bit about how we work, we are a member of Feeding America, the nation's largest domestic relief organization, and we receive food from 4 sources. The USDA, we're the only distributor of USDA commodities. Probably think of it as government cheese. It's not really cheese. Nowadays, it's more pallets of beef stew, peanut butter, highly nutritious items. We distribute USDA product. We distribute food from national manufacturers, Kellogg's, Kraft, General Mills. They'll donate an entire truck of cereal. One time, we got an entire truckload of Cheerios because in the assembly line, they accidentally didn't put enough sugar in. So they couldn't sell it, but hey, it's still good cereal. We also receive food from local retailers, Walmart, Target, Quick Trip, the little sandwiches. All that food comes to us, and then we distribute it out. Anything that doesn't get sold, or a sports icon does something foolish and his face is on the front, that kind of stuff works greatly in our favor. A box of Wheaties with Tiger Woods after that, one situation. So we get food from an amazing amount of local retailers, local farmers, an individual who has a community garden. They just bring us extra tomatoes. And all that food goes out really quickly to our agencies. The fourth way that we get food is obviously community food drives. A local organization like you guys today brought some canned goods, and I'll be taking that back with me to the food bank. And you wouldn't think it would make that big of an impact, but just one can can feed a family for one meal sometimes, because it's that tight. And if you've ever participated in the scouting for food, where the Boy Scouts come around, all of that food in St. Louis City and County comes to the food bank, as does the food from the National Letter Carriers food drive, Stamp Out Hunger. When you put it out, the mailman comes and gets it. That food also comes to us. And then our job is to distribute it out to our partner agencies. 60% now of our agencies, we take the food straight to their door with our trucks. 40% still show up and pick it up at our warehouse, which is sometimes a little scary. You know, these agencies are often run by volunteers. They don't have a budget, so they show up in a Corsica and have to take 3 pallets of food. So, you know, I mean, these people are working really hard on the front lines to make sure that folks get the food that they need. The way that the community can really help this problem and help address this issue is twofold. Obviously, a food drive. Just having a food drive, hosting it in your community, and spreading awareness about the issue of hunger in the United States. The other way is by volunteering at the food bank. Last year, we had 16,000 volunteers come through. And basically what they do is they come in for a 3-hour shift. We take children 2 and up. So often we have school classes, scout troops, that sort of thing. They come into our volunteer center for 3 hours and they repackage and sort food that was donated to us. Walmart, for instance, will donate a truckload of food, but it's frozen meat mixed with boxed macaroni and cheese, and it has to be sorted so we can refrigerate it and store it properly. So we could not do what we do without our volunteers. They actually are the equivalent of 21 full-time employees, the volunteer effort. So if you ever have an afternoon, or you're wanting some community service hours, or you just want to help out, you just sign up online for a 3-hour shift, and you can show up, and we'll teach you what to do. And if you don't like it, you don't have to come back, but most people end up loving it and keep returning to us. Until I started working for the food bank, I think I said this, I really had no concept of what hunger was like. I'm from a small town in Illinois, and if someone was hungry, the neighbors would pitch in. Plus, it's a lot of farmers, so they usually grew their own food. But people think of hunger as an urban issue. I think Luann mentioned this. But some of our poorest communities are the rural areas. You can't purchase certain food items, nor can you purchase toiletries with food stamps. So I did a story about a woman whose home had burned down. She lived in Irvington, Illinois, speck on the map, tiny town, near nowhere. And her house had burned down. She lost everything, lost her job, had no car, so she couldn't get another job. And the only place to buy anything in that town was a convenience store. So she couldn't spend her money there because all she had was food stamps. I think her income was $200 a month total. That was the only money she had coming in at all. So she relied on the food pantry to be able to feed herself. And without it, she quite certainly would have become very ill and possibly starved. And we hear that story so often that folks, particularly folks who made a great living and lost the job or had an illness or had another life emergency and suddenly found themselves scrambling. We have an agency in Chesterfield, and we've heard stories of, some of the big fancy houses out there, of families living in those houses with nothing in them, selling off all their possessions, living in them, and going to the pantry because they're too ashamed to let their neighbors know that they are in financial ruin because they've lost a job. So the people, the faces that you see when you go to the pantries is so much different than what you ever would imagine. And at most of our pantries, every time I go, I'm always amazed. People will line up outside. If they open at 10, people will line up outside at 6 a.m. And they're not getting filet mignon and lobster. So when you hear stories about, people are working the system and, they're scamming, they don't really need that food. Trust me, you would not stand out in the freezing cold or the blistering heat for one bag of groceries unless you really needed it. Or, you're an old miser and you really just don't have anything else to do. But for the most part, there's not much corruption going on, even though there's a misconception that there is, because we're not giving away money or TVs. We're giving away canned goods. So I think that's about all I have, unless you need anything else.
Thank you so much.
I'm happy to answer any questions.